Show you that they are masters and that you are under them.
To reflect on what really what it was like in South Africa is very difficult to remember now. I think of the moments that I had lunch with Nelson in here, or I met Walter, or I went with Yusuf somewhere, or I was with Albertina and the women. And somehow the bad times I've put way back, and I remember the good times.
You get stoical, you know. You have chosen that path, and I would do it all over again.
My dear, things happened, my dear, and under difficulties. If you can know the way we brought up the children whose fathers are locked for 26 years, what would you do, really?
As a daughter, you are very proud, you know. But I won't deny that there's also that thing, the misgiving in that, you know, the politics took him away. You know, I had a father who was there, but never there. Was not there to grow with us, you know, as we were growing, and to fall with us when we were falling, you know, and pick us up and say, you know, it's okay, you fall, but you can go forward. He was robbed of that.
He was just all over South Africa and all over the country, and with people in meetings and what have you, and in jail and out of jail and so on. So he was really not a father. And that is one thing that I think he regrets mostly to this day, that he was never there for his children, never could provide for them like an ordinary father would.
I grew up saying I would never be like my mom, or I would never be like my dad. I would be a totally different human being from them. My mom, very highly religious, Jehovah's Witnesses until, you know.
He could do anything for the politics.
The family comes second, but the politics comes first.
Both my parents, in their different ways, one in religion and one in politics, and politics and religion also, committed to their causes, without any compromises, being true to their causes until the end. The classic one is when my father said, when he dies and goes to heaven, the first thing he'll do is to join the ANC. Well, what is that? Even when, as his children, we sit around, the four of us, and talk about him and have our gripes about him and everything. My brother, Makati, always reminds us that my father is an ultimate politician committed to politics. There's nothing we can do about it. And it's difficult for children to accept it. Because at some point we thought we could have him.
This is a very old picture. This is the man I remembered before he went to prison when he was underground, 1961.
We would meet Tata in town, sometimes dressed as a blackjack. The first time we went and he directed us there. And it was this big, it was a really huge farm. And he would take us walking in the forests of the farm. And I would ask him, why are they, I knew why they were here, many were hiding, and because he was not eating, and I would say, why, because we would go there and we had this big breakfast. It was a very nice place. And he would say to me, he's preparing himself for when they go to war. I think they had in their minds that they would go to war and they would not be eating and so forth. And so that is also a very good storyteller. Very good storyteller. And he knows how to embellish, his stories and whatnot. And so those were wonderful moments. Those were really wonderful moments.
The time comes in life of any nation where there remain only two choices: submit or fight. We shall not submit, and we have no choice but to hit back by all means in our power in defense of our people, our future, and our freedom.
My husband was never there when both children were born. When my little daughter Zinzi was about 6 years, she was playing outside. She said, but now you say all the black men fight for the black people so that they should have all the things the whites have in this country, isn't it? I answered her. I said, yes. And then she said, but next door, Mommy, their father is there at home.
I remember at some stage when my sister and I were asleep, we were actually removed from the bed, whilst we were asleep, and they searched under the mattress. I remember things like that, and they would actually take my mother and go off with her without a care as to who we'd be left with.
Madiba said, during my lifetime, I have dedicated myself to this struggle of the African people.
The suffering she went through symbolized a great deal of the suffering that millions of other women were going through.
Our marriage has been sustained by the great love we have for one another. In this country, even love is political.
You can incarcerate the body, but the spirit cannot be incarcerated. Even the quarry on Robben Island could not diminish his resilience.
Whenever I got to the island, I got such inspiration from the visits that it was something that I looked forward to regain my own strength.
Winnie contributed also in making my dad an icon in the myth.
Every time she went to visit him, he wrote her a letter to tell her how he felt and how beautiful she looked and how difficult it was for him to stand there and not be able to touch her.
Through the letters, I could touch him. Through the letters, I could communicate to a father who's flesh and blood. I could talk about boyfriends, I could talk about traumas of my marriage, and he could advise me on a lot of things. And to me, somehow, I really treasure, it's ironic, but I treasure the moments when my dad was in jail because I could, through the letter, I could touch him. I could feel him.
This letter must have been written when I had written to him about some birthday or other and perhaps mentioned the pigeon meal we had in 1951. So he writes back, he says, "My dear Amina, how dare you torture me by reminding me of that pigeon meal? That's rubbing salt into a fresh wound. After 28 years, I still think nostalgically of that memorable day." And it goes on talking about the birthday and various other things. This was a very sad letter when it did come because it brought back such memories of when he was free at least and we were free.
They'd come out of prison together, that wonderful picture of them walking side by side, which is how we had hoped that this story would end. They lived happily ever after.
Yeah, then I believe that he would come home to Winnie and wife and husband would continue and the family would be reunited. I don't think he had any, no, that I didn't have any doubts about that.
You could see just how deeply Madiba loved Winnie. He would follow her every movement around the room, almost like a little puppy looking at its master or mistress. We have to give thanks for the role that she did play and weep with both of them. That this break, which was very traumatizing for him.
Those are the moments where you say, here is a human being. He can be vulnerable. He can feel the pain. He can be traumatized. How wonderful. Because then I can identify with that person, And that, for me, is the most important thing, not the political. The important thing is the human side. When he came out, he became swallowed into this vortex of society which savored the image. And maybe the world needed, this icon, this larger-than-life human being. I don't know.
The day Tani Elise discovered that the natives are friendly. He called me one day and said to me, I want you to arrange this lunch with the wives of the ex-president and all the ministers. Yeah. I thought it was the weirdest thing I've ever heard, but nevertheless, the president's telling me to do it, so I said, okay. And we went along organising this amazing luncheon at the presidency. Nelson was in very high spirits that day. He loved that occasion, absolutely adored all the women, and they adored him, most of them. They really did love him.
For all of us, we were just pretending, I must say, to be kind and smile, knowing very well what they did to us. But I greeted her. I did, and smiled. I greeted her. I remember that very well.
At one point, he said to me, I want you to make a speech in Afrikaans.
Dit is snaaks vir my om hier te wees met 'n vrou. Is 'n man vir my vir 17 jaar gebannerd. Ek weet nie wat om te sê vir banning me. And as the president says, we must put that behind us. Perhaps never forget, but forgive. And for reconciliation, we've got to search our hearts, open our doors, and let the future in.
A young prince of Abatembu, he let his voice be heard, and the nation echoed, Madiba.
As human beings, we crave for leadership, for guidance, for assurance that it's okay to go on this trend. And so somebody has to be brave enough or sacrifice to take that lead. That is something special and unique, to him as Nelson Mandela.
We have entered a world which has become very materialistic and doesn't care a damn for values. And I think he reminds the world, reminds us and reminds the world that values are important.
I don't want to lie, it's a great honor to be Mandela's child. But it also comes with a burden also, because sometimes you're not allowed to be yourself. There was a time, when people would ask me and say, Mandela, are you related? I would say, no. And then people would say, is the Mandela surname common? I say, it's very common in South Africa. Because, sometimes it becomes just too much. Because if I see this myth, this martyr, this icon, I can't. It's somebody who's beyond, my reach, who's beyond flesh and blood. And when I look at that, he has achieved so much for South Africa and beyond, South Africa, and giving so much of himself. I prayed at some point that at least that I would, be truly happy and find love. But I think when you've gone through so much in life, there's always that hole that can never close, And but his friends have remained true to him, and that's wonderful to see, And it's not a lot of them, the handful of friends that he has have remained truly loyal to him, and I think that gives me a lot of comfort as a daughter.
I was visiting Nelson, and he had his housekeeper, who also cooked for him, Sarah by name. And he said to Sarah, do you know who this is? And Sarah says, yes, I know who she is. So he said, you don't know that I nearly married her, but she preferred to marry a Muslim boy.
Yeah, there were very many intimate moments, but I think he had intimate moments with very many people. That's a lovely photograph. Yeah, I don't know what I was telling him at that stage. Probably reprimanding him.
Tata is a very strict father, make no mistake. He is very lovey-dovey out there and hugs and kisses, but he's a very firm and typically traditional father.
My father is truly a Xhosa man. And in Xhosa culture, you don't rise above the others. You are the same as others. And you respect elders, and you respect authority, and you respect rituals, and you respect custom. You know, that's how we grew up. That's how we grew up. And, you know, when my father became president, when we were in Cape Town, Dennis, he called us and told us that now that he's become president, we shouldn't have stolen headed. He's the president. We are not president. And we should be humble and be kind and be generous to people.
Come and stand next to the man I made you marry.
The dresser there, I think he's becoming more of a family. But you can see it's difficult.
Which has actually helped to bring us closer. That she really has. Because for some years now, Utata has been trying to father us, like in isolation. And it hasn't really been easy because he's been trying to play a role that he hadn't played before, you know? But she has made it that much easier. She's made it even easier to be able to talk to him about very sensitive things.
My wife and I.
The greatest lesson that I take away from my dad is that despite all the pain, despite all the trauma, despite all the dehumanization and in efforts to demoralize him and to belittle him, he would not give in. He would not give up. He held his head high with dignity, and he would not be distracted from achieving his goal that he has set. To me, as a daughter, that is the greatest gift, that is the greatest legacy I will live with and I will carry on. Because to me, this is what Nelson Mandela is as a human being.
Well, the Defence Minister told us earlier that